again, back with the crossover with your host Brian and Ravi. Ravi, we're gonna get right into it with the game of the week. We got the Grizz plus this San Antonio, I believe, in Memphis over the weekend. San Antonio takes it 107-101. T. Duncan with a triple-double, 14, 10, and 10 for the old man. Looking quite, I think you use a term in this case here, offline, spry. So what do you think?
The big consistency.
The big consistency.
Consistency. So a couple things right off the bat. Memphis got off to a pretty good start this year. They got off to a hot start, 15-3. But when it comes to the Spurs, the Spurs still show that they own the Grizzlies in recent years. Mm-hmm. And a couple things play into that. I think last couple of years the Spurs have gotten better defensively on the perimeter. Mm-hmm. They're still solid down low. Duncan, I think him coming into the season losing some, he's dropped his playing weight, so he's looking a lot more mobile, a lot more spry to a certain extent. And, on Memphis' side, Zach Randolph even though he's still a great player and he still looks good, he's gotten a step slower. Mm-hmm. And he's another year older. Yep. So, and Memphis, aside from the ascension of Gasol, Conley's been playing pretty well.
Solid, man.
Yeah, Conley's been playing well too, but I think the Spurs were already a good team, and they're just adding pieces that just makes them even better. Well, and I don't see Memphis making those same types of adjustments in the offseason.
Well, here's my thing with Memphis when it comes to San Antonio in the Western Conference. Let me work it backwards in this case. Why is Oklahoma City always such a threat to San Antonio? Because they have athleticism and length. Right, and what does Memphis lacking? Athleticism and length in this case. They have some of it in Tony Allen and Gasol, but overall, they're a bulkier, kind of like grinded out type of team. That's their style. And San Antonio's we'll take that any day of the week. We just don't want those thoroughbreds coming at us left, right, and center. That's what's going to give us trouble. So I think when you look at how the Western Conference is stacking out, people are trying to play out cerebral San Antonio. I don't think that's going to work.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's not going to work. I think it's the reason why the Clippers fail all the time. I think it's the reason why Memphis is failing all the time. It's just you're just not going to win that battle. You just got to pretty much do what Miami did a few years back, where their athletes took over, as well as you see with Oklahoma City. You just better have the dogs out there just to deal with San Antonio. That's always been the case with San Antonio. Even go back with the Lakers,
Exactly.
Right.
And I think, if you look at San Antonio, I think their record is 17-5 right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're about 5th or so in the West.
Like that,
so they're around there. And
double check.
They're about 5th in the West. And, these guys are just, they're on cruise control. Mm-hmm. They're on cruise control right now. Yep. And, they're winning the games they're supposed to win. And look for them to make a push right after the All-Star break, like they usually do.
Exactly. I just want to say bye to good night to my daughter. So she's becoming almost like a bit of a third host in this case for the show.
The unofficial third host.
You're telling me about it, man. We have to bring her like how PTI has when one of us are on.
The unofficial third host.
You're absolutely right. I think I'm just going through my head, rattling the teams that give them trouble. Like Houston gives them trouble in this case. Houston, in this case, has a lot of speed, a lot of athletes play a running up and down style that might give San Antonio problems because they have no one could really check Harden. Dwight's power and physicality is going to be an issue. So Houston, I can see being an issue. Portland, maybe to a lesser extent, they're kind of built similar to Houston, but I don't think, they do have athletes too. So that, but after we saw last year, they got dismantled by them. I just don't think. I think they're just out of their depth when it comes to that. Golden State's interesting. I'm not sure where to put Golden State in the mix because they're not the most athletic team in the world. People think they are, but they're not really when you look at their roster. Iguodala.
I'll tell you one thing. If you're a Golden State fan, you're loving it right now.
Oh, yeah.
You are absolutely loving it right now. And they play a style that's, it's very easy for the hardcore fan and the casual fan to kind of jump on that bandwagon. Mm-hmm. If you're not a fan of Golden State and their team, I'll tell you something, boy. When they come down and for no apparent reason, they just pop up an ignorant three just for and hit it on a fast break.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that'll drive you nuts. But I think they play a very, very perimeter-oriented game
Yeah.
and run and gun game to a certain extent. But we'll see how that translates in the playoffs.
Right.
Because
They do have the D. They play D though. This ain't like old Golden State teams. They play D.
they play D,
You know, Mark Jackson had them there playing D, and Steve Kerr's taken to another level. They play, yeah.
Yeah, they're playing set. I think Kerr of all people knows that. When it comes time to the playoffs, it's your offense sells tickets, but your defense wins games.
True, and I think but going back to Spurs, I think the Spurs are pacing themselves nicely. They're kind of just lurking, almost like when you're watching like a horse race, like Kentucky Derby. You're sitting there just drafting behind the front runners.
Yep.
And I think the second half of the season, you see San Antonio going to make their move, man. Memphis, I think, will still be reckoned with if they get the right matchup, though. I'm not dismissing Memphis. Wherever the Grizzly fans are, they're outside Memphis. Not disrespecting what Memphis is doing. I think Memphis is going to be in the mix as well, too, man. So I think that's kind of a bit of a break down both teams, a little bit of like where things stand after the quarter mark in the Western Conference, man.
The standings don't reflect it, but look for the usual suspects to be there in a couple months.
Well, yeah, for sure. So, topic of the week. Obviously, unless you've been in a hole for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there's been a lot of unrest going on in the United States over a lot of different cases, dealing with some cases dealing with unarmed black men and the police, and unfortunately, some deaths coming from it. There's been some opportunities to indict. In this case, in both cases, one in New York and one in Ferguson, Missouri. Both times, in this case, the police officer has been found, I'm going to say not guilty, but they have found not enough evidence to indict. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And obviously, there's been a lot of, consternation, discussion, controversy, and just flat out just anger in this case of what's going on and what's happening there. And I think we've seen it now spread into different realms in this case. So, we've seen it in retail when it comes to shopping. We've seen it in this case with other activities, and we've seen it in the sports world. In our football podcast, I mentioned it this past week, in this case of what the Rams did over the weekend. And then last night, during warm-ups, Derrick Rose for the Chicago Bulls had a I Can't Breathe t-shirt showing his support for the protests that are going around the country. And I guess I wanted to broaden this out more so as a discussion of like where do we see athletes as far as being able to speak about issues, be it political issues or major issues that are happening in the world, or in this case, in a national sense in their country. Should they be able to speak about it? And and is it the right place for them to speak about it? I'll say my 2 cents about it afterwards, but I'll get your say on it first, Ravi.
Most definitely. This is a subject where it's a very touchy subject, very sensitive subject. My personal view is that I think, I'm glad to see guys like LeBron, someone of his stature. He's shown a real willingness, if you want to say, to speak out on a lot of social subjects, whether it be the Donald Sterling issue last season, the incidents within the last couple of weeks. He's been pretty vocal about.
And Trayvon Martin.
The Miami Heat team, and they were pretty vocal in the Trayvon Martin case as well, and then most recently that with Derrick Rose. So it's good for me. It's good to see guys of that stature who have that platform, who have a voice, who have a following,
right?
To really voice, whether it's support their opinion, whatever it may be,
right,
on the issue. So I think it's good to see that. On the other hand, if you have a prominent athlete that chooses not to, the way I view that one, that's his kind of prerogative, right, to if he doesn't want to. And right, the first person that comes to mind during his playing days is Jordan.
Right.
Jordan was a guy where you could talk to him about anything, but when it came to social issues and things of that nature, right, he was pretty vanilla about it.
Right.
But hey, I mean, if I look at it as I'm going to see these guys play basketball or football or whatever the sport is. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to hear their comments on the game, on the how they thought, like how many points they scored, mm-hmm, relating to the game. That's what I'm going to see these guys for. if they want to give me additional commentary on social issues, to me that's a bonus. That's something I personally like. But if they choose not to, it's not something I necessarily have a problem with.
Right. Well, I split the difference with you a little bit in this case here. I agree with you. I think in this case here that if you have that type of platform, that type of forum, and you're able to say something about it, and you can speak intelligently about it, and you don't even have to get really deep in a thesis about it, some of these things, I think it's just more to show that you're attuned to what's going on around you.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we as fans, we want, sometimes you want to say it both ways. It's like, oh, whenever something's going on or something like that, we say, hey, you guys are tone deaf. All they're doing is they're big cars. They don't even know what's going on in real life type of thing. Yeah. And then when certain things happen in this case here, where it might make folks uncomfortable, they say something about it. Everyone says, "Oh, you shut up and play basketball, or hit a baseball, or shoot a puck, wherever it may be." It's like you can't have it. It can't cut it both ways. And that's the case for some fans in this, when it comes to that. I do agree with you. I agree with you that if you don't have anything to say, maybe because maybe whatever the case you feel uncomfortable about it, is whatever the case may be, you shouldn't have to be forced to say something. I don't agree. However, and I mentioned this before, I think there is some extra responsibility for those that, those who wear the crown in this case here. And I think it is one thing, if we're going back to Memphis, if Zach Randolph doesn't say anything, really, Kanye shrug, right? Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
But I think in this case here, if a LeBron, let's just say now Kobe, they didn't say something, even Durant, they think it's now reached that type of status where it's like, if they did say something about it, it'll be like, well, what the heck? And I'm not necessarily saying even something of this issue. I think you go back to Sterling, something that's in their own backyard. Yeah. I think to me is like, I think it's even more like, whoa. And I think if the scenario happened, for example, the Trayvon Martin situation happened obviously in Florida, it made sense for a Florida team, in this case, to speak out, just like St. Louis. Yeah. It made sense. I'm not saying that someone from another, even the thing with the immigration issue. Remember Steve Nash and a lot of the Phoenix Suns were not pleased about, the ruling of the Arizona law when it came to immigration. I have no issue. And you see anti-war ones over the years as well too. So we have seen that athletes make stands. It can make change. Go back to Ali, John Carlos, Tommy Smith. Yeah, it can make change. So I think it's very important that those discussions and those type of comments still go out there. Heck, even when you go in something like Venus Williams, when it came to fair pay, when it came to that with women in Wimbledon, it moved the bar in this case. So when I see that, I'm very happy to see that. We mentioned some other avenues, in this case, a celebrity, where we've seen the mic kind of been dropped, mind the pun, where, and this, to be honest with you, I think going back to my Sterling example with the NBA, I think this falls into a lot of the hip-hop artists in this case who obviously use this lifestyle as a way, in this case, to, speak whatever they want to speak about their truth. Yeah. Here's their opportunity now where it's sitting right there on a platter for them. We're not talking about, social political issues with North Korea or nothing like that. We're not talking about any sort of bill, a farm bill or something like that. This is talking about things that are directly related to this, things that they can understand. Yeah. And three of the most major stars in the community has said absolutely squat about it. Yeah. Jay-Z, Kanye, and Eminem. And I think all three of them would bring an interesting perspective. I'll put the article down below. Obviously, it's not sports related, but I think it's a really important article from. I'm not sure it's a blog post from Hip Hop Wired. I think it is. I will make sure, but I'll have the link below. Just talking about it from different perspectives from each one of them, where they can bring something to it, which would be very different. Eminem, I think, actually might have the most interesting perspective about it. Yeah. So when I hear these guys, like when Macklemore in this case is putting his face out there, of course a lot of other dudes out there, like Killer Mike and other guys are putting their name out there, Big Boy. It's good to see that, but I think it adds a certain type of gravitas if those guys were to speak out about it. And I don't expect much from Jay-Z in this case here, but I'll just really leave it at that. Kanye, I am a little surprised he hasn't said something about it considering his history.
Well, I think with Kanye, unless it's directly benefiting Kanye's not speaking out on it.
True.
Now,
well, you see,
that's the thing that's frustrating to me about Kanye.
Yeah, I had this debate actually with my wife. Actually, she kind of comes at it with your angle. Mm-hmm. She has that angle. We always said we might do a Shelby report or something like this, but we'll see. But I come at this way. I think he has shown in the past, in this case, obviously it's earlier on in his career with the George Bush comments, that wasn't anything to reflect Kanye.
I think it's almost like watching two different Kanyes, though, because that Kanye I think was more of a socially conscious and minded person.
It might be.
And I think the Kanye that we're seeing now is like the brand.
Well, fair enough. I mean, you could say the same thing. The same thing could be said when you ripped out of Jay-Z about the Barney situation, about the profile Barney was doing. Yeah, Jay-Z's making a deal with him. He ripped him on stage or something like that. Now, true, was that in benefit of Kanye in this case because he's upset about not getting some deal or something like that? Maybe. But, I mean, you didn't have to do it. Supposedly that's his boy in this case. So I think there's still some of that backpacker Kanye still left him somewhere there. But we'll see. But I think it's going back to, I don't want to go too far. I digress. But I don't want to go too far far away from it. From a sports standpoint, I do think in this case, when you're the top dog in your sport, I think you have a different responsibility versus everybody else. So I understand your Jordan point. I hear it. I respect it. I disagree with that standpoint from him being who he is. If it's Karl Malone, no one cares. To be quite honest with you. Barkley can say his opinion, but ain't no one looking for Barkley's opinion. He just cares to say it. By the way,
well, see that so that's that's an interesting angle to kind of look at the issue too, because we have like some guys were looking to get their views on certain social issues. Then you have some guys that who may give their view on it. We may not necessarily agree with it, and we jump and we criticize them.
Right.
Like Barkley's comments last week.
Right.
Now, whether you agree or disagree with Barkley's comments that's up for debate.
Right.
But the point is, he did come out. He did make comments towards it. But then so I think like some guys may. I think that I think a lot of guys have opinions on it, obviously.
Oh,
but
for sure.
I think they have more. There might be people who have more Barkley type opinions per se, but they're afraid of coming out and saying anything because they don't have the type of gravitas to a certain extent that Barkley has to kind of say. And I don't say get away with stuff, but he everyone says, "Oh, it's Barkley." He just says what he wants. But it's like,
to your point, what I thought was beautiful about the Kenny Smith letter, which I will post that as well down there as well too at the bottom of the links, is that when Kenny Smith posted his letter on I think it's USA Today, I thought it was very thoughtful. I think he missed some points as well too, as well as when they had the follow up on Thursday night's show.
Yeah,
I won't get into the full details, but I think I'll just say this and put it on the table. Folks can take what they like. I think they kind of dismissed some of the institutionalized racism that's happened in this case with some of the Jim Crow stuff that happened over the years that's still in the judicial system, education system, and stuff like that. That being said, what I did like with Kenny Smith's letter is that, he kind of put it up for the context he put it was like, pretty much he said in a very intelligent way, he pretty much dismissed Barkley right off the top in this case, like, listen, when it comes to race relations, people talk to whomever they want to talk to deal with race and social politics, be it if you want to talk with the president or whomever it may be. That should be a lot more qualified to discuss those issues than say a basketball Hall of Fame retired player. And the point he was making was, I don't know why people are running to Charles all the time as if his word's gospel. In this case here, and okay, Charles Barkley's opinion. Charles Barkley even proved our point on Thursday night when pretty much said, I don't know much about slavery. I just know pretty much why a couple books I read in my grandmother. I'm like, boy, I was like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I got no issue with Barkley in this case overall. I mean, take it or leave it. I mean, sometimes I agree with some of the stuff he says, sometimes I don't. But I thought that was real telling when you put that out there like that. I was like, wow.
To play devil's advocate, like the same way how Kenny, worded that letter, like, basically saying Barkley's not an expert in these types of subjects. Why are we running to Barkley for his opinion on certain issues? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we could say the same thing. Let's say, for example, LeBron didn't want to make a statement towards
it. All right, I see where you're going with. Here's my thing. It's not so much in this case that they have something to say about it, but the weight that Barkley's thing, I mean, the dude's on CNN for like a good 30-minute discussion. Like, where are you? Like, really? Like, come on now. Like, I mean, tell me we're talking about something you happen to ask about that. Fine. But when you're bringing Barkley on, as if in this case here, where he's like Michael Eric Dyson or something like that deals with race and politics every week, like come on.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's a different thing to ask a dude after a press conference.
Yeah, their choice. I mean, CNN's choice of who they wanted to bring in on for that particular subject was very questionable.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think that's the point Kenny was making. Like, let's not elevate. Yeah, he has his right to say what he wants to say. Good for him. I'm happy for it. I think it's good for the debate. But let's not elevate it too far. I mean, when the guy comes out 3-4 days later and says pretty much, I don't know much about slavery as far as reading a couple books and I learned from my grandmother. I mean, take it with a grain of salt. That's all I got to say about that.
So let's make an interesting analogy here, and we're gonna kind of again, we jumped out into the music piece of it, so we're gonna jump back out again, just to get your thoughts on this. So, would you say that we as visible minorities, would you say the statement that we pick and choose what we want to be offended about? Do you think that's a fair statement? And I say that for, the one thing that comes to mind is R. Kelly.
Yeah, but here's my thing with this. Okay, I see where you're going with this. I think for one thing, here's my point. I think almost any minority group gets put in that position. You can almost put that. You can almost take that out, visible minority, put women, right? And you can say, well, how come this woman's considered to be a feminist and this one here is considered to be a, whatever they want to call her? Yeah. Two do the same thing. But yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I think that's almost a human nature thing. Now, as far as that R. Kelly goes, I think it comes down to reputation. That's what it comes down to, right? So here we go, right? If one person's case is all, and then it comes down to authenticity in some strange way. If you are a certain person, you're always that type of person. If a crime happens in this case that fits into the narrative of what you are, I think people's mindsets change a little bit. That's the reason why the Cosby situation right now is such a big thing. Because he's promoting himself as Mr. Pudding Pop and Mr. Hey, I'm squeaky clean. You can have me at 8 o'clock when you're sitting down watching with your family. Yeah. It becomes way more abrasive when you see it that way. It's like, whoa. Then, I think that's where it comes in. People want to say, well, it's not fair. Well, yeah, this whole discussion is not fair when it comes to a lot of stuff. I mean, but I think that's where a lot of people, not all the time, but I think that's where the mindset comes from in this case. Yeah.
And that's something I kind of want to just kind of bring to the forefront where it's, I think aside from, race is obviously the red button issue. Right. Where, that really gets people going, and as it should, in these types of situations. But, there are other things that are, I would say, just as important. If you're looking at, abuse to young girls. Well, we've had that. What that video showed.
Well, true, but don't forget. That pretty much before this stuff happened, this was all in the background. What was the biggest story going on in sports? Ray Rice. So so that story was, and it's still going. Obviously, I was just speaking about this week in the podcast, so it's still going. Yeah. That's never going to go away. We just talked about Bill Cosby. He ain't leaving anytime soon. If anything, it's growing in stature more and more. I think when it's all said and done, like me personally, from a purely art standpoint, I'll still watch Bill Cosby shows. I'm not even trying to front. Straight. I'm just one of those people I can separate. Some folks can't. I can't. That's just straight.
But you see, you could apply that same thing to basketball then, right? Yeah. Could you apply that same logic to basketball?
For sure. I don't agree with what Barkley says, but I'm still watching Barkley the next day. I'm not sitting there.
No. So I'm just applying that to aside from Barkley, I'm applying that to the Donald Sterling thing. So if let's say Donald Sterling was still the owner of the Clippers, right? Would you still feel comfortable separating and watching and supporting the Clippers and saying, that's my basketball team, forget about the owner?
Here's the difference with the Donald Sterling thing compared to every other one in this case here is that Donald Sterling is dealing with a labor issue. That's the thing. Wherever you want to say with the other situations, there's a lot of he said, she said, whatever the case may be. This is labor. You're now managing people in this case here. That's a whole different angle altogether. That is truly the ownership discussion in this case. So that gives a whole different mindset in this case here. And it's dealing with the employees of your company.
And now I'm saying if the employees are still getting, let's keep it 100. Donald Sterling has been this way for years. Oh. Everyone associated with the NBA has known this.
Exactly.
Right? So, if you look at a Chris Paul, so obviously he got traded to the Clippers. He didn't have a choice to go there. But, when he renewed his contract, he knew the kind of person Donald Sterling was, and money talks.
Right. I'll say this because we're getting a little. Yeah, I say this because it's a good discussion, but we're getting a little long the tooth on it. But I'll say this part with Sterling.
We got to have a part two.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we thought the conversation was so good, we had to split this up into 2 parts. So check out the second part on the Beyond the Locker Room site here on YouTube. Of course, as usual, don't forget to subscribe and comment. And like us, and tweet us, and everything else, man. We love to hear your comments, man.
Want to hear those comments. Keep them coming.
Exactly.